Hi, I'm Morven. I love the craft behind winemaking and love hearing good stories about great wine. But wine still intimidates me, and here's the clanger: I work in the wine industry. If it intimidates someone who works amongst it, how on earth do the normal folk get on out there? People who just like to drink the stuff and don't want to engage in all the wine wank. Not Serious Wine Chats originated in Melbourne, the dream child of a good pal, Dominique, who owns her own restaurants and shares my frustrations. After much lamenting over Zoom chats and wine, we agreed that Aotearoa could do with some Not Serious Wine Chats too. The deal is no big words, no agendas, and no wine reviews. We're not here to judge the winemaker or the wine drinker. We just want to chat about wine and other delicious beverages that float our boat and make our day. Welcome to Not Serious Wine Chats. Hi, I'm Morven, and today on Not Serious Wine Chats, I'm joined by Pete and John from By the Bottle as we host Martinborough winemaker Helen Masters. Helen has been making the gloriously tasty gear from Ata Rangi for a fair while now. She's particularly down to earth, loves her veggie patch, and enjoys a gin. She's super relatable, and we've all grown quite fond of her. We probably should have given Helen a red card or two as she drops into Serious Wine Chat every so often. It's merely a reflection of her commitment to making good juice, so we let her get away with it. But don't panic. As usual, we've added a bit of a glossary on the website for you to refer to post-chat. So pour yourself a gin, Helen would be pleased, and get comfortable. This is the Not Serious Helen Masters Chat. Welcome, Helen. Welcome.
Thanks, this is exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Being in a little box with you guys.
Yeah, on a Saturday morning.
It's intimate.
It is intimate, isn't it?
Yeah. Instead of coffee.
Oh, that's all right. Don't you worry.
We're all in the same boat.
That's right. We've all had coffee, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah,
that's right. If anything, it'll interfere with tasting your lovely wine. But then, are we actually even doing that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to do that immediately.
Yeah. Okay, right.
What do you think?
Excellent.
Hear that beautiful sound of a screw cap being opened? It's quite romantic, isn't it?
It is. What are your thoughts on screw caps and corks and packaging and wine romance and modern day requirements?
Exactly. When there's good romance, right, when things go well, there's a bit of background work that's been done. There's always a good bed and, I don't know, there's a setup. And the screw cap delivers the wine in a way that we want it to be. So it's kind of like then you can really enjoy the romance. Whereas you don't have to worry that it's got TCA or cork taint or anything like that. So I think you can get more romance.
Love it. Excellent. Yeah. You can get to romance faster.
That's right.
The screw
There's
cap.
not going to be an awkward hiccup.
That's right.
Yeah. Where you're having to talk to the somm and say, look, can we have another bottle? And they're like, no, that's how it's meant to be. And you're like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Ruins the whole vibe, doesn't it?
Exactly. The other person thinks you're a dick at the table.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I was really keen to talk to you about is how you even got into wine in the first place.
Oof, yeah. It is probably an unusual story now when you look at how most people get into wine because it's a bit awkward telling the story at the moment because my children are teenagers and I decided to be a winemaker as a teenager. I'm not sure what it says about me. So.
Wow. Yeah.
So young.
I know, but...
and not even at a point where our industry was very far along.
No, it wasn't. And it was purely because I'm from a very large family and lunch was always better when there was wine.
Classic.
Nice.
The conversation was always... a bit more focused on something, it wasn't about politics or religion, it was a little bit more fun and fluid and we talked about the wine and everybody seemed to have different opinions, but nobody got upset about everyone's different opinions when we talked about wine. So it was kind of something that I was like, wow, this wine thing is quite interesting. And then just through various exposures early in my career, I was still at high school. I was working for Ruth and Paul Pretty, who were pretty amazing caterers, and they had a pretty good cellar. So I used to sort of go through the bottles, looking at all the names and looking at the chateaus on the front of some fifth growth Bordeaux, and kind of go, wow, maybe I should get out of New Zealand and go and live in one of these chateaus.
So you're obviously from that part of the world though, right? So Martinborough, the Wairarapa, is home.
No. I grew up in Otaki. So,
which is where?
West coast of Wellington. So basically, here's Wellington. You've got the range in between. On the eastern side is the Wairarapa Valley. On the western side is the Kapiti Coast.
Yes.
The glorious sunshine coast.
Cheese and ice cream.
Yeah, where everybody has a day out from Wellington.
It's a wild part of the country, isn't it?
It's a wild coastline.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's where I grew up. Yeah.
Mm.
So, so when I decided that I wanted to be a winemaker, I thought it'd be a good idea to actually go and see if this whole gig was real. And Michael Cooper's Wine Atlas, one of his original Wine Atlas books had come out, and I flicked through it, and I chose the 10 most friendly looking wineries to write to, and Ata Rangi, there was a lovely picture of Clive and Phil smiling, and I thought, they look really nice. And I hadn't drunk much Pinot Noir from New Zealand back then, and
what were you drinking then?
Well, it was mostly Hawke's Bay kind of Bordeaux blends was really what was consumed most at home. Tiny bit of Sauvignon, that was kind of new from Marlborough. But
what kind of era are we talking? What sort of year are we talking? I don't want to give away the farm, Helen. I know it's a question I should never ask. I feel like
this is a late 80s gig we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's really when things are winding up.
So Central Otago hadn't started.
No,
wanting to become a winemaker. Oof, that's dating me. But that's okay.
Well, I just think
that's cool.
Yeah. So, so, and then the only people who contacted me is that Phyllis from Ata Rangi rang up and said, would you like to come over and we can, have a chat about a job. And my mum drove me over, and
classic.
It seemed so far away. We got to the, to go over the Rimatakas, and it was like, how am I ever going to live over here? It's so far away from anything.
Yeah.
And we arrived there, and Phil was like, well, great, well, right, when can you start? And my mother, she has 12 children, so it's very much a Pat Bennett thing. She can go, she can start right now.
Immediately.
Yeah.
I put her bags in the car.
I don't have any clothes. She's like, don't you worry. And anyway, she packed up my clothes.
You are kidding.
And put them on a Newman's bus, and they arrived 3 days later.
Wow.
Like, couriers have something to learn these days about, put stuff on a bus.
And drop the kids off when, we've thought it through. That was a 15-minute conversation. The decision's made.
Yeah. And so I had a great year just doing everything, vineyard, babysitting, wrapping, tissuing bottles of wine, topping barrels. And then I went to Massey and did a food technology degree. So I went to Massey for 4 years in Palmerston North.
Right.
And then went to Auckland, and because at the end of Massey, being a student, I was, you're poor, you just want to earn some money. So I went to Auckland and worked for Nestle for 3 years, and that was interesting.
Doing what? Sort of in food science department?
And food production, commissioning, helping commission new bits of equipment, and so it was interesting. But really, then I knew I'd always go back into winemaking, and then after that, I went back into working various vintages around New Zealand and around the world, and eventually ended up back at Ata Rangi.
Isn't that unreal that was your first wine job, and then here you are working for them? When did you start with them?
So that was, I started with them in, would be 90.
Right.
1990.
And then came back in
2003.
God.
Yeah. So, I've done things in between,
Yeah.
haven't worked at the same place all my life, but it's been good.
Did you ever waver from the winemaking thing? Like, was that something, because it's such an extraordinary young age to actually have developed that kind of interest?
No, I didn't. I've never wavered from it. I knew I wanted to make something tangible. I didn't want to be a lawyer or an accountant. It just was, I wanted to feel things and see things. And
And did you understand the kind of the farming, was the farming outdoorsiness of it as an aspect of it, was that part of the appeal? Or were you actually, in your mind, you really saw the cellar and the making of the wine?
No, the farming, you know, we grew up on about 18 acres and the huge vegetable garden. So, you know, we grew, we were used to, my mother has a massive garden, amazing garden. So we were used to growing things. And my grandfather was a market gardener. So, you know, growing things we all do, you know. I love my garden now. So,
totally.
Wasn't that definitely is part of the most essential part of winemaking is you have to be connected to the vineyard. Otherwise you could be working in any industry really if you're just looking at that kind of wine in a tank side of the business. And I think the most exciting bit is that trying to get that whole link through from what you've planted, you know, how you've, you know, the match of rootstock and clone, and then orientation. It's so complicated in terms of how the vineyard's oriented, you know, how the fruiting wire's set up, how high the canopy is. There are so many permutations and combinations out there that you'll never quite understand, and I quite like that. I love it that it's not an exact science, that you can't just nail it down and go, we are going to heat it to 60 degrees or anything like you would perhaps in the production of something else. It's definitely not a recipe.
And
you know,
and like one slight tweak has just a flow-on effect is just incredible.
That's right.
You know.
But it's really actually hard to clearly see that flow-on effect because you might not see it till 5 years later, and then being able to link that back. You know, you have to, I think, be in the one spot for a long, you know, for really understand a place because. The things you do now may not be visible for at least 10 to 15 years. So it is, there's lots of leaps of faith, I think, that you do when you make wine in terms of you have to have a lot of conviction about what you're doing because you can't necessarily prove it emphatically. You know, we don't analyse our wines to the nth degree to know exactly that they're made up of all these compounds. You know, you potentially would if you're in a very large production facility, but we don't have the money to spend on that sort of thing. But we also don't feel it's necessary. We really trust our own kind of sense. And also our tastes and styles change in that 10 to 15 years. You know, what we personally are experiencing drinking. So it's very fluid.
Can you sort of pin down the biggest changes that you've made to the way that you make wine in your time at Ata Rangi?
Yeah, so in the time we've been, obviously we've got the original vines are still there and we look after them very carefully because, you know, those roots are now at 42. Wow. They're 42 years old. Those roots are down deep at 4 metres and that's, you know, really the root structure is the most important. It's what drives the canopy and the fruit. So having a really healthy established root system is incredibly important. And so I guess over the time we've been really trying to work out what rootstocks really work because that's what the vinifera is grafted on. It's the driver and how well that's adapted to our soil. So we're still in the process of understanding that, and we luckily that we have some more obscure rootstocks that we can look back on and see, you know, that actually these are 35 years down and these vines are really healthy to help us make decisions about where to go forward, because most of the time the industry gets on a bit of a track and everybody plants the same rootstock. You know, it's 3309, 3306 at the moment. You know, 10 years ago it was 10114. And it takes a while, and we all realise at the same time that, you know, it doesn't quite fit, you know, maybe it's not working for clay. So you really have to slowly try to figure out that side of it. So that's a long process. I guess in terms of the things that probably is the oak. That's been a big thing for me in terms of really understanding that interaction with the wine. You know, oak barrels are really important, I think, in terms of allowing a wine to develop and get you can change a wine a lot by what oak you use. And I don't see necessarily changing a wine as being a good thing. So for us, I guess most people, 30, 20 years ago, we would have purchased a Burgundian barrel from a cooper that was making barrels for Burgundy, because you think they must know what to do with Pinot Noir, because that's what Burgundy is. But what I found is that a lot of the time those were quite smoky and kind of a higher toast level to kind of lift the fruit spectrum. But where we are in Martinborough, the wines are quite savoury, and in some years almost have a smokiness to them. And that's something I really didn't want to
exacerbate.
Yeah. So it was about switching back to much lower toast, and the reason I was confident to make that, because we make a Bordeaux blend called Celeb, and Bordeaux barrels are much lighter toasted, and I started putting some Pinot in those barrels, and we're like, this is more what I want to see. And so then it was the choice to really go, okay, I'll buy your barrels, but we need to talk about how we toast and shape these. So for me, and I think the whole industry as a whole now has really moved and shaped and is starting to say more about what we want and think about what we want for New Zealand Pinot Noir, rather than just go, this is what Burgundy uses, so it must be good.
You stopped emulating and started to
go, how do we really express the site where we are in Martinborough? And because that's our greatest asset, is being uniquely ourselves.
It's really reflective, isn't it, of just the importance of that sort of staying in the one place for a period of time. And that period of time, whenever you're talking about anything that involves agriculture or nature and it's time to develop, is a long time.
That's right.
The idea of kind of knowing a piece of land in 2 or 3 years is kind of crazy talk, because the way seasons will change, the soil structure, seeing how plants behave in that soil, all that stuff. I mean, it's actually quite incredible listening to you talk about it, because there's two things that have just been going through my mind too, is the idea that, man, it's kind of intense to think that the New Zealand industry is as young as it is. When I hear you talk about all of those things that you've already seen in that period of time that you've been on that piece of land, but there's still so long to go, and there's so many other wineries in New Zealand that haven't done half the time that you've done, so they don't have a clue about some of that stuff. But also too, the fact that we talk about wine as minimal intervention, that's kind of I guess one sort of label that we like to put on wines that we are sort of in that sort of movement of being kind of more nuanced and handcrafted and letting Mother Nature do their thing. But in actual fact, it's not that we manipulate, but look at all the decisions that go in to what ends up in the glass.
Yes, I think minimal intervention came out to explain, or try to explain, that the actual final bit where the grapes are fermented into wine is very simple. That bit is fermentation, and fermentation happens naturally. So I guess, so it's been tricky lately, because there's natural wine. Well, all wine is, it's most people don't use yeast. It just happens spontaneously. So I think there's a bit of confusion about what minimal intervention means, and it's normally talked about as being what you do in the winery. When you come into the vineyard, well, everything is done manually by hand. Everything is, and that is a lot of work.
There's nothing minimal about it,
no,
is there?
If we let the vines and we did nothing, they would be completely covered in powdery mildew, and the fruit would be
they'd grow
diseased.
up a tree for a start.
And they'd grow up a tree.
I mean,
exactly. They're a vine, and they need to be pruned, and they need to be pruned in a particular way to a lot of thought into how the sap's going to flow, where the vine's going to go in the years to come. So there's that initial process of pruning. You're stripping the vine right back. There's nothing minimal about that. You're taking it all off, and you're providing, giving it a shape so that you can then grow the fruit. So and then the whole season requires a lot of work to really get that vine to be the shoots to be positioned so that the fruit can then be healthy and clean, using minimal chemicals. So we're organic, so we don't use any synthetic fungicides, but you still need to spray. So you need to set the canopy up so the spraying you do is really effective.
So a lot of work to sort of do, say, the minimal side of that kind of spray.
In the last process, the winemaking. Yeah.
Is there do you feel a lot of pressure? And there's no good venue that I've worked in my hospitality career that hasn't had Ata Rangi on the wine list, and that's in different countries and things. It's really one of the most iconic New Zealand producers, you'd say?
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
a fanboy over here.
That's right.
Unashamedly. But, knowing that the lead time on those decisions that you're making now is so long.
Yeah.
Do you feel pressure about that? Is it a quiet sort of undercurrent of pressure?
Yeah, it is. You always are thinking about what wines they're going to make in 5 years' time. And there becomes a point where we need to have big discussions about, is this vineyard worth keeping? Is there too much trunk disease? Do we need to, re-pull it out and start again fresh so that in 50 years' time, the wines are what we need them to be? So we have those discussions, and we, have pulled out parcels that were planted in really wide spacing, had trunk disease, and had given us amazing fruit but weren't anymore. So we are, always trying to make sure that we've got fruit that's going to produce wine. In terms of my own personal pressure, when I first started there, if I look back on it now, I don't know how I did it, but I had so much going on. I had, started, and then I worked full time, and I had 2 small children. Wonderful husband, who looked after, Ben was pretty amazing looking after the kids at home. But I was pretty tired, so I didn't really have time to worry about it. You just go into automatic pilot. Yeah. And, maybe I'm just a naturally confident person, I don't know, but I just was like, right, let's get this done. And
do you think that maybe because the New Zealand industry itself was still sort of in its such infancy that you kind of almost had that, I reluctantly say number 8 wire, but it's almost a bit kind of like there's pressure, but not in some sort of grandiose scale of how the industry rolls. Because there actually is no industry.
Or, generations of a family kind of thing.
Yeah. I think, though, that it's quite good to not overthink things sometimes. And just be able to sit back and, there's been vintages where it's been really difficult. In terms of the weather and things breaking down, and it's been hard, and I haven't been able to enjoy those wines just because I feel so brings back memories. Trauma. But then I'll be somewhere and someone pulls me something blind. It's like, oh my goodness, it's the 04. It looks fantastic. And that gives you real confidence to just relax.
And what about cellar palate? Like when you're sort of, because you've been making wines off those vines, do you find, clearly you know your wine when you taste it, like you feel that familiar with each wine, because you've sort of lived and breathed it, but how do you keep your palate fresh, maybe is the right way to ask
that? I guess 2 parts to that. The first part is with these wines, I'm really trying to reflect the site and the actual vintages. So the path that I've gone down to try and do that is, okay, I'm not going to find the wines, because finding you get to put kind of shape and smooth and put a little bit of gloss, and they can often look quite polished. So it's kind of, by not doing that, I'm really trying to show the site so that it's not necessarily about me then. In terms of cellar palate, absolutely, there's 365 days in a year. I don't drink every day, can we just say that? But say maybe I'm having friends on a Friday and a Saturday, right? We'll open new bottles. Well, I won't open Ata Rangi because how many millions of wine out there in the world that I want to try, and I've only got how many more years left, so absolutely I want to try something different, whether it's it's a Barolo or whether it's some new Austrian Grüne Veltliner or something. I really want to experience that. Yeah.
And so the sort of evolution of Pinot, because you're probably one of New Zealand's most renowned Pinot Noir winemakers now, right? Has this been the accident of Ata Rangi's where you landed, so therefore Pinot, given that it grows so well in that region, has become the wine that you love? Or have you grown to just really love Pinot and you will always want to make Pinot?
Yeah, it's a good question, but the industry is about who you know and the connections that you make. So when I worked that first year of Ata Rangi, then they were like, oh, well, you should go and work here. We know these people. Yeah. And they're always great Pinot Noir producers.
Yeah.
So the more you know about something, or kind of the less you know, you become absorbed in it. And I think Pinot Noir, naturally, anyone who's been around Pinot knows it's incredibly absorbing and incredibly hard to. We talk about it all the time. I've never talked about a Merlot to such an extent.
Poor Merlot.
I know. Merlot's going to become like the next cool thing. All the young kids are going to be like, oh, Merlot, and we'll be like, okay.
I'm not going to hedge my bets on that one.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So I've naturally just always worked for Pinot Noir producers. If I had to maybe go somewhere else, I'd probably go to Barolo region.
Piedmont,
because I like the kind of, I like the perfume, but I also like it, I like the fine long tannins. To me, I prefer Pinots that aren't just all sweet and open. I prefer them to have, a line to them, a story, a kind of, the way the palate kind of takes you on a journey and evolves in the glass. So
it isn't necessarily all too easy, and that's sort of why I'm so drawn to Nebbiolo as well, is that, there's light and shade there.
That's right. And Nebbiolo, if it was all light and pretty, you'd be like, this is not Nebbiolo.
No.
So there's something about Nebbiolo that, it's got that, when it's, amazing, that tar and rose thing, and it's a little bit like Pinot on the nose. Pinot has that like rose hip, red licorice, sumac, kind of all sorts of interesting things. And I guess Barolo can have kind of a similar, quite lifted.
Absolutely,
yeah. And then you go boom into the palate, and it's that that change, that step change, that makes it really interesting.
Yeah.
And you just and those wines again, you need to be patient and keep them and
even growing quite finicky as well, like Pinot.
Yeah, and in a way, kind of worse because they're quite a lot of disease pressure with it.
Right.
So you need to be on your game. Yeah.
Is there a conversation in the Wairarapa about climate change and the ability to continue to be a Pinot-led region down there?
Yeah, I think it's more about rootstocks, like drought tolerant. We're not really quite sure what's going to happen yet. So it's very hard to make a concrete plan on anything, isn't it, at the moment, because things are so really dynamic with the weather. What is the weather going to do? And in a way, actually, Chardonnay and Pinot are good because they are early ripening. So they pull us out of that worst weather.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go, I'm just going to plant late ripening varieties.
Yeah.
Well, you might not get it ripe because
I've never thought about that.
You're going to be in the eye of the weather. Yeah. So the weather, those storms, ex-tropical cyclones and things. Potentially, there's talk that we're going to get more disruption from that, and that's generally, you don't want those till April.
No.
And then if we, some years we haven't picked Merlot and thing till the beginning of May, so you're hanging out for a long time, and potentially we don't have that length of season. So at the moment, there's not a set idea on, Pinot Noir actually. If we can get, the combination of clone and rootstock right, is looking. We need to stay with Pinot.
Have you ever thought about making sparkling wine?
No, it's a good question.
Given the Chardonnay, Pinot,
I've always thought that that's another whole level of learn, if I was going to have another life, maybe. But I think that there's so much involved. That
I love that in your other life you'd still stay in wine.
Still making Pinot and Chardonnay.
Yeah, I've got quite a few other lives though. But I think it's I would want to do it very well.
Yeah.
So
I can't believe that about you at all, Helen.
So I don't want to just, make it just to make it. I want to, you need years of barrel aged base wine, and it's such another level of knowledge and things that I feel that I should just concentrate on making Pinot Noir and drink some other person's champagne or other Cremant or other sparkling wine and let those people do it.
Yeah.
Rather than try to do everything, because I don't think I would do it as well as them.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's another life, another 30 years involved there of doing it really well. We could all just bash something into a bottle and call it something, but I wouldn't probably get satisfaction from that. And then most people just drink it themselves, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather just buy some really good grower champagne, some good
that's sort of the circle of respect too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just the same way they should be enjoying lovely Pinot that you've made. It's sort of that exchange, isn't it?
Exactly.
Of community,
Yeah.
It's like they make great sparkling wine, so I'll enjoy their wine, and when they want a really lovely Pinot, they can enjoy mine.
And then when you talk to a grower who's, the land's been in the family for however long, and this is the style of wine they've been making because you're like, damn, I want to know about that.
Yeah.
I want to try that.
Yeah.
Rather than just try and do it myself.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah. Would you, if you had to, is there another region in New Zealand you'd like to have a crack at for a while?
Crack at?
Yeah.
Let's have a crack at.
Or if you, do you just feel like you've sort of, your roots are in that part of the world too now, so it's sort of, that's where you've, or is that another lifetime as well?
Yeah, I obviously you're connected to a region for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
And so if I was just going to go somewhere just for wine making reasons, nothing else, I'd like to, maybe have a North Canterbury.
Yeah.
There's personality.
Yeah.
And the wines from North Canterbury, and I'm always attracted to that. There's quirkiness, there's personality, and that's kind of probably why I'd go there. Yeah.
So you and Ben, where you live, you're surrounded by Masters Vineyard. You've got your own grapes. Do you ever need a break from it?
Oh yeah. So do my kids. And especially when there's always this, you get through harvest and you think you're going to relax, and then you look out there every day at the unpruned vineyard and you're like,
just in your face.
And you're just like, and we prune quite late to try and protect against frost, and you're just like, if I could just go and prune it all in one day, then that would be done. But it's not like that because we prune it slowly ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's like a job that goes on and on and on and on and on. And then I guess the time that the kids would say that they wish we didn't have a vineyard is like that Christmas New Year period.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Where it's fairly critical, but you're trying to have a holiday, and then we're normally packing up to go to the Coromandel, and I'm like, we can't go unless if all the wires are in place.
Yeah, that's right.
And but the kids have really been really good embracing the vineyard. They don't complain too much. I've convinced my daughter Stella that bud rubbing at the bottom is quite like not a job anybody wants to do, but it's like, it's really good for your thighs. She's 17, so she's like, okay, she gets a tan, puts on her short shorts and works on her leg tan. And then my son Harvey, he's a boy. He likes lifting the wires, especially when the canopy gets big. Goes out with Dad.
How do you feel about points, scoring, reviews? Because it is your heart and soul. There's a lot gone into the wines. we've had a bit of a chat about this too, where it's sort of a consumer conundrum.
For context, from our perspective, from having a retail business, we made the decision really early on that we don't want a bar of points and things like that. That's not how we talk about wine. We talk about wine, in the sense of when you drink this, and that wine is very occasional, as opposed to trying to measure quality with a number.
Yes.
So that's sort of the conversation that we've had around it. But then we understand how important it is to a lot of producers.
Yeah, so the first thing is we don't enter any shows.
Right.
So we've taken that one right out, so it's just not a conversation we have. But it becomes, at the end of the day, you need some external person talking about your wine. Otherwise, if you're just always talking your own people, how do they get an understanding that from certain other people in the wine industry that it's revered or a well-made wine or it's an interesting wine?
That endorsement.
So that it's not me telling you should buy the wine.
Yeah.
Because and also we're not very good at doing that as Kiwis. We're very I would like someone else to say it, not me.
Yeah.
So how do you
we
get
know
that?
From working in a restaurant, and it comes the other way as well in terms of making complaints. Kiwis don't want to do it. To your face.
Yeah. So what do you do? And then how did they quickly and easily get that information out? And you can see by the point system has been developed, because it gives them a way of, because no one's reading stuff these days. No one's reading an in-depth article.
No.
They just want a short thing, and so it's really played into points. But there is difficulties because some scorers, a 92 is amazing.
Yeah.
For others, a 98 is amazing, and a 92 there's not so amazing.
Yeah.
So I feel very sorry for consumers to be able to understand that. Like Jancis Robinson, 16.5 points is a really good wine.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas most people go, oh, it only got 16.5 points.
Yeah.
So it is really tricky in terms of using that information, because you might have submitted your wines to, say, Decanter, and Decanter's 92's pretty good score. Someone else, 98. So and also, wine reviewers do have style preferences.
Yeah.
So once you've got to know a reviewer's style, if you think they're not going to like that vintage because it's not the style of wine they like, well, then you're less likely to submit it to them that year.
Yes.
Because it's not, someone else will love it.
Yeah.
One reviewer, this is definitely the style of wine they're looking for, whereas another one, that's not the style of wine they're looking for.
It can be incredibly analysed and, considered from every little minuscule part per million that's on your palate, to quaffed with gay abandon and not even, thought about.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is sort of great. That's sort of the beautiful thing about it, is you can get as geeky and nerdy and, strip the absolute fucking life out of it if you want to, or you can just really enjoy it for being a lovely, delicious, beautiful glass of wine.
That's right. And there's a lot of stuff that's innately in us, that of smells and things that are familiar or comforting. Like the example would be Vegemite versus Marmite. They're pretty much nearly similar, but they'll be like, oh no, I'm a Vegemite person. Oh no, I'm a Marmite, because that's the kind of smell that they've been brought up with as a child. And if it's a positive association, then they're naturally drawn to it. So there's different styles of wine where you go, oh yeah, that takes me back. It brings me to a memory, and it makes me feel comfortable, or it makes me feel happy. And wine has a lot of that stuff in it, and so not necessarily will my wine be received by everybody the same all around the world, because of we're all so different and unique. And I guess the same problem exists within the art world. We might go to an exhibition that is just like completely, everyone says is amazing, and then there'll be a whole lot of descriptors about that art exhibition, that it's this person is really groundbreaking and blah blah blah, or something about the technique, but we might not necessarily see that because we are not but we kind of appreciate it, because when we look at it, we go, okay, so this person, and we take that on board and go, okay, so there's a level of uniqueness and skill here that we probably don't get. And we need someone to tell us that, because we look at it and we can't necessarily see it. And sometimes that's the best thing about when people write about wine, is they tell a story of a place or of a producer and give you some of that information to put into context the wine.
It is context, isn't it?
Yeah, because you might go, oh, it's it's a lovely Pinot, but what? It's not as amazeballs as but it's in those quiet moments of trying to understand what the producer is trying to do, and maybe what an artist is trying to achieve, that maybe you gain more understanding. I don't know. I'm trying to say this.
You always hear that about art, like, oh, I could do that. Without understanding the journey that artist has been on to get to doing
That's
that.
where I like exhibitions where it's one artist and you get 30 years of their life.
Yes.
And you start at the beginning and you're just like, wow, look how they've transformed. Like, wow, this is intense.
Are there producers or styles or sort of new things coming through in our industry in New Zealand that do really excite you? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, there is, and it's all around the world. But to me, I guess there is an issue for them, and I can really also identify with the fact that land is so now expensive.
Yeah, like trying to buy a house in Auckland kind of thing.
Yeah, how do you get into this industry? And so the way they're doing it, I understand it from that point of view. And when there's people who are doing it with a real passion and a drive, and making wines that don't need to be aged because they don't have the money, and they don't, just making like a pet nat that is then released quickly, so that there's not as much cost attached to it. I get that when I can see that, there's a real drive and they understand the business and they're trying to do it from that place rather than just because it's cool to have a wine label.
It's a starting point.
Yeah, and I think in Hawke's Bay there's got lots of interesting people there who are really making some really refreshing, vibrant wines that are important for the market, because obviously you'll see that drinking patterns have changed so much that my kids, my son tries our wine because he's a 15-year-old boy and he'll drink anything. But
I don't know if they've ever grown out of that.
No.
A 15-year-old boy will try anything.
I know, but my daughter's like, oh, it's not really me. But, they're learning, but most of what they're surrounded by is canned kind of bubbly drinks. Yeah, and so it's a big leap from there to here, right? So how do you cross that bridge to get them to understand wine, and that it's not just an alcohol that's a byproduct of something else put into a can with some flavours?
Yes.
To understand that about, you're making something that's been made by people, that's been naturally fermented, it's got nothing else in it.
There's only one chance a year to do it.
One chance a year. And so that's where these, I really appreciate all the people who are doing really fresh, vibrant styles of wine that there's a lot of heart in them. There's a lot of, and it is often, couples or groups of friends or just little small businesses that pop up. But when you look at them, they actually do know about grape growing, and they do know about, you look at where they've been and done it, and
who they've worked for.
Yeah. And this is their way to try and get a step into the market. And I think, that's super important, and very. I love drinking those wines.
And important. I think. Yeah, you're right. Keep making wine relevant to younger demographics, and their buying behaviour is so different.
That's right.
And we see this with our business. They don't just buy a 6-pack of this one Chardonnay they tried. They'll get this cider and a bottle of this pet nat, and then they'll try this Italian red, and it's a real mix, and they're much more willing to take a punt on things they haven't tried before.
The wine industry isn't a conundrum, isn't it? Because, there is this... I mean, I don't think we're too far off the sort of that next gen being our biggest kind of consumer, from the commercial aspect of this conversation, that the sort of a very big part of the population is going to be that demographic that we're talking about that maybe isn't really getting into wine in a way that they truly understand the craft behind it. And that's an industry-wide, not just New Zealand either, that's an industry-wide global conversation, I guess, around... Obviously, there are some cultures which are a bit different, but that's a hurdle. I mean, when you were talking before about some of the the great thing about some of the younger guys coming through who are trying to do things differently. I remember talking to Michael Glover from Mammoth, and he was explaining, he rallies against all of the conventional shit that he learnt when he was a young buff winemaker, thinking he was a bit hot shit, and putting everything he could in it, and in the lab science experiments, and he said now he just rallies against all of that, but he sort of said, and it's like what you were saying about the artist too, Helen, you kind of have to go through that progression of, you can paint the painting and now you want to just cut loose and make something that sort of feels a bit chaotic, but in actual fact you understand the journey to that chaos.
Yes.
And I know one of the things that he said, which I think will resonate, is he loves hanging out with some of those guys who are slightly doing it, ass about face and kind of just having a go. Because he said he's learning to let go. That's where he learns to let go of all of the taught.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I still think, wine should be about the grapes that you've grown all year. I think...
Yeah.
I think just covering it with Brett and making it kind of bready and sour. I think, fine, do that with beer. But to me, the amount of hours that I spend in that vineyard, if I was just, I don't add yeast, I don't add anything. But if I was to not look after it and encourage spoilage, it would be such a waste of all that careful effort. So I think there's a line.
Totally.
There's such a line that needs to be kind of explored and understood, that when it feels like it's just throw more at it, throw more spoilage, yeast, things to make it wacky. Then I think you lose the connection to the land.
Yeah.
You lose what farming and is about, and grape growing is farming.
Yeah.
This is not, we're not importing malt and hops from different places and then combining them like a craft brewer would.
No.
We're actually, all we need is grapes. That's all we need. And we don't add yeast, we don't add anything. So therefore you are doing your best to carefully let that wine have purity.
Yeah.
And I think purity is important. You can make it as wacky as hell, but you lose the purity, you lose the soul of the site and the soil and the hard work of all the people. If I was to pull out one of the wines and give it to one of the guys who work in the vineyard who only drinks beer, but it tasted like a funked up wine, they'd be so gutted.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh, what have you done to it?
Yeah, my bloody word.
So it's all, there's a line and a way, like, to me, that with everything that in terms of. Also, like, how many of us, if we're really honest, can drink a wacky 10% craft beer? We drink a tiny bit of it.
You can have sort of maybe half of the can or something.
That's right, until you're kind of a little bit overcome.
Yeah. That initial novelty of your shock on your palate kind of wears off.
Yeah, and they almost become too rich, too much, and it's kind of there is a balance between complexity and purity. I think that needs to be respected sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's where those people will probably end up, that are making these wacky wines now, they're probably going to go, what is she talking? I'm probably going to make the most pure wines in 10 years time. They're going through a process.
They're on the journey.
And so they're it's important, and I love going and trying wines with them, and they love trying they love trying wines like ours, because they see that we're all on different parts of it.
And we saw that in Melbourne, where like great wine scene, but initially a lot of the sort of minimal or natural producers, their wine was like, there was some absolute garbage.
Yeah. I think
but now they've like a couple of those producers are just making some beautiful wine,
pristine. Yeah. And it is such a pendulum, isn't it? And we've seen it with varieties like Chardonnay, where it sort of really swings both ways, and then producers come back to sort of a bit more of a middle ground sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. And I think as long as you like, for me, I'm trying to make wines that I love to drink, and then there'll be people out there who identify with them. But I think as soon as you try to make wines that you think someone else wants to drink, then you're screwed. You should just make wines that you think are really great wines, and then people will come to you.
And that's the art of it, isn't it? I mean, that's the correlation with art. It does have that same thing. I think that's what's so beautiful about wine, and why it's kind of slightly heartbreaking that, you know, it's kind of slightly out of favour for all the other options that are out there at the moment. And that too is just a natural, that pendulum will swing too. It's just that in the meantime, how do we keep all of these boutique family owned wineries in business? Because it is bloody expensive. You know, if you're paying 45 or 50, maybe $60 for a beautiful bottle of Pinot, I mean, you know, there's 365 days of hard graft that have gone into that bottle, and it's been paid for by the winery 4 years before you have it, before you pay your $40. The winery's already paid for that, you know, 4 or 5 years ago to get it to you. And it's sort of that,
as a business owner, that is just so scary.
No, that's right. I mean, that's the proposition. I mean, and even, I mean, I remember crazy things like if you wanted to, you know, have bottles, you know, keep bottles in the winery before you release them because you wanted them to be released tasting their best, you were taxed on that every year until you released it. And then you had
stock.
It's like then you had to apply for a rebate to get the tax back. So a winery, I mean, that has changed. That one aspect has changed, although other taxes on around alcohol have all gone through the roof, and so it's kind of neither here nor there. But you literally, if you were an honourable winemaker trying to make beautiful wine, knowing that most people aren't going to cellar it, it has to be lovely when they buy it because they're going to open it that night, and you want to hold on to it because this is what you're trying, this is the pursuit of what you're doing, this is everything you are doing is to make this beautiful wine. So you think, I'm going to hold on to this for another couple of years so it's ready. You have to pay the tax on it if you sold it every single year until you let it go.
So rough.
So rough. I mean, it's bank breaking. And the sort of, I think that's the other thing that I love so much about wine, is that it's kind of torture.
Do you feel that sometimes?
Oh yeah, the last 2 seasons we've had very small yields. And it's heartbreaking because, you know, you have so many plans about what you're going to do. You're going to, you know, replant the site here because you want to get that going, or you want to buy the staff that new tractor that's going to make it easier. And you just like, you see it all erode away. And you then, you know, your plans to release a wine later, so it's had more time in the bottle, you know, you need to release it sooner than you wanted to for cash flow. So it is, I think, when that, you know, that cool spring comes, or we get a frost, or we get, you know, indifferent weather prior to harvest, it is tough. And it can be, you know, the last couple of years we've really struggled to get staff. So everything's felt quite tough. So we're looking forward to a really beautiful 23 where the fruit level is nice. You know, there's a nice amount of natural rain. We don't have too many weird frosts or, you know, really cool southerlies in spring during flowering, and then summer is beautiful and the weather's not too hot and it's not too cold. And
sounds amazing.
So
and you'll have plenty of staff
staff, and all those things will just be hunky-dory. But it is a interesting, it's not for the faint-hearted.
No, that's right.
It's not. And trying to build enough kind of fat, if you want to call it, in the business so that it can be long-term. So it's not just an immediate, you're not thinking 5 years, you need to be thinking 15, 20 years ahead. And to do that, you actually need to, you know, you need to be making a profit.
Yeah.
And so, like Will said, by the time you know, that bottle comes to you, of course the winery doesn't get all of that money. So it is a, you know, but the last couple of years have been great because people haven't been travelling.
Yeah.
So they have been investing in drinking beautiful bottles of wine, which is fantastic.
It's great.
And I think, you know, I would just say drink less but better. Yeah.
Great.
Totally.
Yeah. My dad actually once said to me, I'm Helen, I'm worried about your retirement. And I said, Dad, why would you be worried about my retirement? He goes, because I've spent all my life developing a liking for cheap wine, and it's paying off in my retirement. And I said, well, Dad, don't worry, I'm just going to drink less but better.
Yeah, you've got a cellar of Burgundy to get through.
And have a bloody enjoyable retirement.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for listening to Not Serious Wine Chats. We hope you enjoyed it. We'd just like to take a moment to thank our mates at Antipodes Water Company for their support.